you will never understand the importance of community until you have had to relocate out of your own country to a new country. And this was a realization that dawned on me after we left Nigeria and relocated to the UK almost 3 years ago. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some parts of my early journey and how community actually played a major role in the early phase of my journey as an immigrant professional here in the UK. Hello, my name is Blessing, and I am a doctor currently practicing in the UK. And here on this channel, I share about my journey as an IMG doctor navigating a new culture, a new healthcare system. And I am documenting all about it, sharing with you what it's been like. I am also a mom to an amazing toddler and currently expecting my second child. So I also share about how I am managing or how I am able to balance motherhood and career in a new society and in a different healthcare system. So I'm documenting all about this while also showing you about other aspects of my life, my other interests, and how I am able to still do all of this despite my busy life. So if that sounds anything like you, then you're welcome to become a part of this community. Okay, so without further ado, let's just jump into the discussion of today. After passing my exams, my PLAB exams, it took me almost about 9 months to finally get a job. I initially had some problems sorting out my GMC license. That took some months, and eventually when I did, I started applying for jobs, and believe me, that was a very difficult time because I applied for a whole lot of jobs, and even though I got many opportunities for interviews, after those applications, a lot of times I wouldn't just be able to nail the job. But eventually I was able to nail 2 jobs at once, and I had to choose one of them, and this was based on recommendation. So eventually it was time for us to start planning to relocate into the UK to start this new job. And believe me, it was already like towards the end of my second trimester of pregnancy, and by the time we're going to be moving into the UK was going to be the beginning of my 3rd trimester of pregnancy. So I had a lot of worries. I was anxious. I was like, how am I going to cope in a new society, a new healthcare system where I practically do not know anyone, with a 3rd trimester pregnancy and a new job? And yes, I know medicine is general, but different society will probably have different work cultures, and it might take me some time to probably understand these work cultures, and it was just a whole lot for me. I had a lot of questions, I had a lot of fears, because I think until that time, of course, I've been able to make some moves within Nigeria to places where I didn't know anyone. But this time around, it was like leaving Nigeria completely to an entirely new society that I have never been in my life, and where I don't know what to expect really. And I was just really worried. Like anyone in that situation would probably also feel the same way. And so in the process, one thing that we tried to do was to reach out to people, maybe through WhatsApp groups, through Facebook groups. We just wanted to join groups where there were other people, other Nigerians like us who have done the same thing, who have relocated to the UK, and can now offer some level of support, maybe advice or guidance on what to do, who to contact, how to go about things, and all of that. But somehow it still wasn't enough. I felt that there was just this need for somebody who was closer, not just a group, not just a page, but somebody who that I could really relate with. Anytime you get a job in a certain location and you're going to be moving from Nigeria to the UK, I don't know if this is what everyone does, but what we learned from some persons was that it's usually good to try to find a way to connect with people working in that particular trust or any trust nearby or in a neighboring town, just to give you an idea of what happens in that environment, and just so that you can kind of get to know about that environment before you even get into it. So this was what we did, and we tried contacting various people, and eventually we were able to get connected to some persons who were working in the trust where I got a job, and that was such a relief. And so I started asking questions about the environment, about the workplace, what to expect. Is there anything I had to start doing, in order to prepare for the new job? I just wanted to get a bit familiar, just to have an expectation, before I get into this new place. And yeah, people will just give you, general information, and yes, and that was it. And the funny thing also is that different people have various experiences, because sometimes the people you work with, the department you work in, can make a whole lot of difference, such that what you're sharing might just be your experience. It may not translate into everyone's experience. Somewhere along the line, there was a twist to our story, and that was when a certain lady reached out to me via this WhatsApp group where I was added to, asking if I could help her bring something from Nigeria. But at this time, we've already maxed out our like the capacity of luggage that we could travel with. And at that time, we were so broke that we could not afford to pay for extra luggages. We even had to give out a whole lot of our stuff, our clothing, a whole lot of things, because we could only travel with a few things. And so I had to tell her, unfortunately, I would have really loved to bring this, this thing for you, but right now we don't have enough space to accommodate that. And she totally understood it. And so that was it. But then later on, I was able to reach out to her. I just one random evening, I reached out to her, and the whole aim of this particular call was just to ask questions regarding the workplace, and just maybe somebody that I can now speak to one-on-one to answer some of my questions. I know it's like a general suggestion on the group, and so I spoke to her. I asked her about the workplace, and she told me that, oh, she has been working there for about 2-3 years before then, and she said a whole lot of amazing things about the place, and that was quite reassuring for me. I was still worried. I still had a lot of concerns, and that is because of my pregnancy. I was just worried about starting a new job with a third trimester pregnancy, and I was just trying to prepare my mind for the worst. Is the job so stressful? Is it a friendly environment? Is it a supportive environment? Would it be easy to get through things? Would people easily support you? And a whole lot of things. So I rang her again, and I told her that I was pregnant and this was the situation. And one thing that stood out for me was that in every of our conversation, she was always reassuring me. And that actually went a long way for me in the whole process. And eventually it was time for us to move, and yes, it was a long flight because that was all we could afford. We couldn't afford a direct flight at that time, so it was a really long flight and a difficult one for me because I was sick somewhere along the journey. And by the time we were getting to the UK, I was already tired. And this was actually one of the concerns that my husband had back home, in Nigeria, when we were preparing for, the move. And that was the fact that at that time, I had already been admitted to the hospital twice in that pregnancy. And he was just worried about if I'll be able to cope with the stress of relocation and the stress of a new job, a new environment, especially in a place where we practically do not know anyone. On a few occasions when we talked about it, I usually end up crying because I'm like, oh my god, it's my first baby. How am I going to have my first baby in an environment where I don't know anyone? Like, I don't have a clue about how to look after a baby. What am I going to do? And I was just so, sometimes I just get overwhelmed with the reality, that was right in front of me. But one thing about Nigerians is that somehow we have this spirit of resilience, and you always see it, in our conversation, in our life. Like, no matter how challenging you perceive something to be, or something you feel something is going to be, it usually does not hold you back from taking that step. Most people would take that step and hope that somewhere along the way they'll be able to overcome this challenge. And so you hear this popular saying that, don't worry, when you get to that bridge, you will cross it. Even though I know that there's a high possibility that there will be challenges, there will be difficulties, but then am I willing to throw this opportunity away because of the challenges that I feel I perceive might happen in the future. No, I feel like that is not enough reason, because we knew that it was time for us to leave Nigeria at that time. And also because this opportunity, I didn't want to lose it, like missing out on that opportunity of that new job at that time. And so, yes, we'll probably face some challenges, but we just knew that we were going to be fine. And that was the spirit, that was the heart posture when we left Nigeria. And so, irrespective of whatever challenges we were going to face, our posture was that we would just find a way to overcome it. And this was very helpful for us, because it was a really difficult experience. My first few months in the UK was really tough for me. Eventually, we came in, and this particular lady that I have been chatting with was really very helpful to us. You know when they say this phrase, human, an angel in human form? Yes, that is exactly what this lady was, because she went over and beyond for us. And the funny thing was that until we started talking on WhatsApp, I didn't know who she was. She didn't know who I was. We hadn't met anywhere. We didn't have anything in common. It was just the fact that she was I think she's just like that kind of person. She's really a kind person, and it was so easy for her to extend a kindness to even a total stranger. And that's the part that actually wows me about it, because you would think that she was like my sister, or that maybe my mom practically handed me over to her with the way she really looked after me and took good care of me. She opened her doors to me. She helped us to actually settle down into the country. And sometimes I just wonder how much more difficult our experience would have been if she was not in the picture, because she was so helpful. Like practically the first few months, every step we took, she was so involved, she was so invested, in us, and that I am always grateful for. When we came in, I could only secure a room in the hospital accommodation. I couldn't secure a family accommodation. So that meant that I was going to be the only one living in that room. And my husband had to find somewhere else, because it's a single room and it's just me that could live there. So fortunately for us, my husband was able to live with a family friend that we got to know through the church community back home in Nigeria. So it was more like, oh, there's this new couple in the neighboring town. They are new, please support them. And that was just it. And they were so lovely. They took my husband in, and so my husband was practically living there. He would come, and then be with me during the day, and then we'll return there. And which was really difficult for me, because at that time, that was the first time I was really staying away from my husband, and even after I tired, like at the end of the day, I'm so tired and everything, and I just want to come back and chat with someone, maybe just talk about what my experience was, and all of that. But it wasn't there. And I totally understood why, because that was the only arrangement that we could afford at that time. And even at that time, we were so broke, we had already spent all our money that we couldn't even afford to rent a house outside. So we were practically waiting for me to earn my first salary for us to be able to get accommodation. Now, the other part to it was that before we came in, my husband is also a doctor. So what we were told is that, oh, it will be easier for him to get a job. But then we later realized that that wasn't the actual truth, because it took a while for my husband to eventually get a job. I started this new job, and I think it was quite difficult for me, not just because of the pregnancy, but also because the unit where I worked in, it wasn't a very friendly environment. It wasn't a welcoming environment. A lot of the colleagues were not really so nice. They weren't really so kind. I don't know if it's because of, okay, initially I just felt, okay, I'm new. Maybe it might take them a while to warm up to me. But I don't think that was the case, because all through the period I was there, nothing really changed. And that was when I came to the conclusion that I think it's just these people, because I was eventually able to meet another community of people, which was other Nigerians who were also working in that trust. And believe me, there were so many of them. And one thing you would hear a lot of people say is that, that the trust is IMG friendly, that the trust is very supportive to immigrant professionals. And that was quite reassuring for me before I started the job. But when I started the job, that was not my experience. And so when people say that, this is not what they're experiencing in their unit. I feel a bit different. So at some point, the only thing I could do was to keep anticipating when I was going to move into a different posting. But also because I was pregnant, it means I was only going to be in this job for just about 3 months before I go on maternity leave. Yeah, so it was really it was a really tough time for me, you know. Also realizing that there was a lot of information gap, that in order for me to cover it, I needed to learn a lot of things, you know, very quickly within a very short time. That was quite tedious for me, especially having to manage pregnancy with all of that, and even accessing healthcare, trying to figure out what to do. All of that was really stressful. So, but thankfully, I was able to meet a few Nigerians who were able to guide me on what to do, who to reach out to, and you know, it made things much more easier for me. And I'm just imagining how more difficult it would have been if those people were not in the picture. Now, you know, I told you about this amazing lady who was there, supportive, you know, opened her doors to me and my husband, you know, and she was just all shades of amazing. But that was not the only thing. She took it to another level, and that was introducing us to a community that, my God, I would say it was one of the best decisions that we made. You know, like becoming a part of that community was a major one in our journey, because I'm just imagining how we would have struggled so much as new, you know, immigrants in the UK if that community was not there for us. It was a church community, and this particular church, it was just as though they were waiting for us to come, and you know, they showered us with so much love. There were so many people in that church, like people who have been in the country for a very long time, who understood the system, who knew how to get through various things, who could, you know, provide us the right information, who could guide us through various things, and their help was massive. It was really, 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 really like major for us. Not just that, you know, even when before we had our baby, they were so helpful, and even after we had our baby, it was the support was massive. You know, it was, as you know, even down to getting baby stuff. We got a lot of baby stuff from the church, things that if we had to invest our money into buying those things would have cost us a lot. And you know, the funny thing was that because my husband was not also working, we had just a little amount of money to that we had just a little amount of money for us to be able to get by. And also because I would have only worked in the UK for about 3 months before I go on my maternity leave, I wouldn't be entitled to any form of pay. And also because I am on a skilled worker visa, I am also not allowed to do any other job or in any other way aside from my primary employer. So it means that there was no way I was going to make money during my maternity leave. And my husband was also not working. So the only thing we could do was to save aggressively. Oh my God, I saved aggressively. Anything that was not necessary for life, we're not investing into it, because we weren't sure what the coming months were going to be after we have our baby. Since I wasn't going to be working, I wasn't going to be earning, and my husband was also not working significantly. So it was doing this, because after trying to get jobs for many months and it didn't, we decided, okay, why don't you go for like a clinical attachment? Maybe that could improve your CV and maybe give you a better opportunity, because all the jobs were more like seeking for people who already have NHS experience. And even when you attempted to get like a locum job, it was still the same thing. Everybody wanted somebody with NHS experience, and we're relatively new in the country. How is he going to get the NHS experience if somebody doesn't employ him? So getting a lot of things, a lot of baby stuff from church members, baby's clothes, you know, pram, cot, a whole lot of things saved us a significant amount of money, and we're able to save a significant amount of my salary, my earning at that time, you know, towards the period when I wasn't going to be working, which was very helpful. Like, we had a lot of baby clothes, baby stuff, food stuff, you know, it was just amazing. And you know, it made me actually understand the power of community. You know, back home in Nigeria, whether or not you like it, it's so easy to be part of a community. You just, where it might be in the place where you live, you just get to know your neighbors. There's just an opportunity for you to be able to meet your neighbors and other people that you live together in the estate. You know, maybe there's an estate meeting or something, there's an event where you just get to meet each other, you bond, and you know, you just get to know people. It could be in your church, it could be, there are various opportunities for you to become a part of a community. But then when you come to a place like the UK where people tend to live in isolation, you realize that you know, back home in Nigeria, it was something I never really thought about. It was something that was maybe underrated, yes. But then when I came here, I understood the significance of community, or being with people that, you know, you share similar characteristics, people who could understand what you're experiencing, people who could support you, people who could be there for you. It was an eye opener for me. And you know, it made me actually appreciate that we as human beings were actually not designed to live in isolation. Yes, you are meant to be a part of a group, and you know, that was the reality that I came to understand through that experience. And so that was basically our experience at that period. And I'm just imagining how much more difficult it would have been if we weren't part of those communities, if I didn't get to meet those people at my workplace. Because even at my workplace, despite how difficult the job, the work environment was, and even though I was struggling to understand the work culture and all of that, just having a few people that I have similar characteristics, it was quite reassuring. For some of them, maybe for those who have been working in the trust for a while, they're able to provide some guidance, they're able to give you some idea on how to get through certain situations, or maybe to get through certain challenges. And for some other person, it was just the warmth, nothing. You know, it was just the fact that, you know, you can speak to them, you can talk to them, they can just, you know, comfort you, offer some level of warmth to you. And that went a really long way, you know, for that period of my journey. So really, I think the aim of this particular part of my journey is that I really want to share all about my experience. I want to document all about my experience from my early days and even until now, because it's been a continuous journey of learning. And even though it's almost 3 years in the UK, a lot of times it doesn't feel that way, because I still feel like, how long is it going to take me to finally understand this culture? Because even till now, there are still so many things that I'm still struggling to understand about this new environment, about this new society, about the culture here, about the lifestyle here. You know, I am still struggling with eating some foods, you know, understanding some expressions, and you know, it's a whole lot. So definitely relocating is a major life event, but having a community, being a part of a supportive community, I think does makes the journey much more easier, and it does offer some level of, I wouldn't say some level of protection, some level of, you know, cushioning to everything that one is going to experience in the process of the relocation. So I know for some persons, if you are like me and you have had to relocate from your country to the UK, especially as an immigrant professional, I'm sure you can relate with some of the things that I have shared in this video. And yes, so feel free to actually share your thoughts. What was your experience like the first few months of working in the NHS, or even outside of the NHS as a healthcare professional? How was it for you? What challenges did you have? How difficult was it? How were you able to surmount it? Were you a part of a community that was supportive? I was also a part of a lot of online communities too that also provided a significant amount of support. So how was the experience for you? Please feel free to share in the comment section. And don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and also subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you in another episode. So take care. Bye.